Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I'm so glad you're with us, wherever you are. If you're joining us on the airwaves here in Santa Barbara, California at TVSB, we welcome you. And so many of you join us from all around the world at goodlifetelevision.org and at our YouTube channel. You can subscribe there, by the way. And the newest thing we've had over the last 6 or 9 months is the podcast platform. So we're seeing that a lot of you are finding us there. You can, any podcast platform, you can search Good Life Conversations and find us there. And we just are glad you're with us. We've had such a great run here over the last few years of incredible people, all walks of life. We've had entrepreneurs and business leaders. We've had athletes and coaches, young people, great life stories, entrepreneurs, overcomers, and public servants. And we have a public servant here with us today. I'm so excited and grateful to have Sheriff Bill Brown here where we're sitting in Santa Barbara, California. This is our sheriff. So Sheriff Brown, welcome.
Well, thank you, Dean. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
It's great. And congratulations on your re-election in June.
Thank you very much.
Have they got done counting ballots?
Election, yeah, they are done with that. I was in the primary, so.
Right. Well, congrats on that.
Thank you.
It's 5th term. I think you're doing something right if you get 5 terms. But by the way, I've never said this, but I mean, I got to say, you just look like a sheriff. Like I think, you know, if you look up sheriff in the dictionary, it should like have a picture of you. That's just my opinion.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
so
and with the cowboy hat for sure.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your upbringing a little bit and kind of your schooling and kind of coming up.
Sure. I had kind of a unique upbringing. My father worked for Billy Graham,
Really?
the evangelist. He worked for him for over 50 years.
I didn't know that.
And he is a great story about he and my mother, how they met. My mother was British, and she was an actress on the stage in London. And Billy Graham had a crusade in London in 1954 at Haringey Stadium. And she was going through some really tough times in her life, and she was invited to go to this on a lark. It was some friends that were kind of mocking the whole thing, and oh yeah, let's go see what this American evangelist is all about and everything else. And she went, and Billy spoke, and she gave her life to Christ at that point, and went down and went forward, and she ended up having Ruth Graham as a counselor that was down there on the field.
No way.
And so somebody must have told her that, hey, this is a gal who's fairly well known on the British stage, and she ended up said, well, would you like to meet my husband? And my mom at the time had no idea who she was talking about, and she said, well, yeah, I would. And so she went backstage and met with Billy Graham that night, and it really started a relationship that solidified. Billy was just kind of had done some early motion picture ministry, and decided that he wanted to do a movie called Souls in Conflict, and he wanted real life people to enact their real stories. And so he asked my mother if she would do this film, part of this film. And so she did, and it was filmed. And then they sent when the film was done, they asked her to come over to the United States to premiere the film. And then they were going all around. What they would do is they would take the film to churches, and they would show the film, and she would give her testimony, and then they would pass the plate and make some money for the Billy Graham Association. And my father was the guy who ran the projector and had all the logistics, and basically went with her around the country to all of these churches, and they ended up falling in love. My father proposed to her on the New Jersey Turnpike, and
no way.
Yeah, and they ended up getting married, and the rest is history. And so
Wow.
Anyway, we had this association, and then he worked. My dad became a crusade director, and so he would go in advance of Dr. Graham's meetings across the world and across the United States. So as a result of that, we traveled extensively, and I had 22 different homes, I think, by the time I was 14.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So we were all over the place. And then he was back in England in the 1960s for about 2 years, setting up a very large crusade that Billy was doing there. And I ended up going to an English boarding school for a year while I was over in England.
Wow.
And about 10, 11 years old at the time. And I went to the St. Lawrence College, the junior school at St. Lawrence College in Ramsgate, Kent. So I got this great opportunity to be to sort of have a taste of the British educational system, and it really served me well. And when we came back to the United States, we went to New York, and then as I was sort of approaching junior high school age, we really, my dad wanted to really try to settle down, and as it would happen. Billy Graham was looking for someone to lead his motion picture ministry, Worldwide Pictures, which was based in Burbank, California. So we ended up putting a taproot down in Burbank. He was in Burbank, we lived in Sherman Oaks. And so that's how I sort of got to California.
Wow.
A very circuitous route. And then, just went to school there. And when I was in high school, I had the chance to take a class called Police Role in Government that was taught by an LA police officer, and it just planted the seed for me that, hey, this is what I want to do. I love this. And at the same time, there was remember the television program Adam 12?
Yeah.
Was a very popular show on TV, and it was a story of two LA patrol officers, one a senior guy and one a rookie, and just what they got into, and that just really sealed the deal for me. That's what I wanted to do. So ever since I was about 16. And
don't forget about Chips, by the way.
No other cops in the yeah, I was gravitating towards the blue uniforms, not the tan ones at the time. So, but yeah, it was a great experience. And I didn't. I graduated high school. I did not want to go to college straight away at the time, and I couldn't be a police officer because you had to be 21 to be a police officer. And so in between, I ended up worked on an ambulance. I ended up being an ambulance driver first, then an emergency medical technician, and then I went to paramedic school and worked as a paramedic. But I always, as soon as I turned 21, I started applying at police agencies and ended up getting hired at a small police department up in the Bay Area with the city of Pacifica.
Yeah.
Worked there for 2.5 years. It was a bedroom community of San Francisco, very quiet, nice community and great department, great people. But I just was a young 20-some-year-old officer, and I wanted some more activity than what was there. And I ended up, I was there long enough to meet and marry my wife, which is the best thing that
that's where you
I've
met.
done. Yeah, that's where we met. And then we got married, and almost immediately I had transferred to the Inglewood Police Department down in Los Angeles County. Worked there for 12.5 years, and went through the ranks I was a patrol officer to start, and then a sergeant, and then a lieutenant, and then I was an acting captain, and just had a great time with the city of Inglewood. And but I wanted to be a police chief. I wanted to kind of move my kids to an area outside of and I have a special needs son. My oldest is an autistic man, and he at the time was in school, and he was in special ed classes and just was always sort of with other autistic kids. And my wife and I said, he's kind of learning how to be autistic. And we ended up, long story short, I ended up becoming the chief of police in the city of Moscow, Idaho. Went to Idaho, and my son was mainstreamed most of the time there. And I think to this day, he's very high functioning, and I think it made the difference in terms of his education. It was really great. And he was with the same kids as they matriculated through the grades. And it was great, and we loved it. But after about 3 years there, we missed California.
Yeah.
We still had relatives here. My folks still lived here at the time, and we wanted to come back to California. And I ended up seeing that they were looking for a police chief in the city of Lompoc in Santa Barbara County, and I applied for that job and ended up getting selected for it, and was in that position for 11.5 years, and loved it. Still love the community. I still live in Lompoc.
Yeah.
And it was great. And then in 2006, I ended up
running
for sheriff, and I got elected, and I've been here for almost 16 years now. Ever since then. So.
What a great story. I've got so many questions from that, but I'll start with what was what was it like having to go out and get elected for something after serving as a police chief in an appointed position all those years?
Very different.
Yeah.
You know, police chiefs are appointed by city managers usually, or sometimes directly by the mayor, depending on what form of city government there is. And obviously, sheriff is really the only elected law enforcement officer position. And you know, I was actually hesitant to even run because I didn't think, I didn't have a lot of wealthy friends, and I didn't think I was going to be able to raise the money. You know, when you run a campaign, a countywide campaign, you have to raise a considerable sum of money
Right.
to run effectively. And I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to do that. And a friend of mine who was the legislative advocate for the California Police Chiefs Association, of which I was the president at the time, I talked to him about it, and he goes, "Oh, no, you should do it." He goes, "You'll raise the money." He goes, "I'll give you money. My wife will give you money." And you know, and I was just kind of flabbergasted that, you know, that people would throw that kind of support to me, and you know, and we took a leap of faith and ended up, you know, campaigning. Came out second in the primary, so it knocked it down to myself and the incumbent sheriff at the time, and went to the general election and ended up prevailing in the election. And you ask about what it was like when we woke up the next morning. The newspaper, they still had newspapers delivered to the house then. There was a newspaper, and opened it up, and the headline on it, you know, had about me winning the election. And reading the story, there was a line in it that said that I was the first person to beat an incumbent sheriff in over 100 years in Santa Barbara County.
Really?
And Donna, my wife, was next to me, and she said, "If I'd have known that, I would have never let you run."
Right. Thanks for telling me now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So 06, you've won 5 times.
I have.
You-
One time was uncontested, but yeah, 4
Okay.
times in contested
And
elections.
I want to get into a little bit of kind of what you've been through in that tenure, but I have to stop and go back to your original story. So your mom met God at a Billy Graham crusade, but she was invited because of people that were kind of real cynical about.
They were mocking
mocking
the whole concept of Christianity and people going, you know, publicly going forward to accept this as a.
But that changed her life. I mean, that was the
absolutely.
day, and that's now impacted everything you.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously I wouldn't be here today
Right.
if she hadn't done that. But it was you know, it was an amazing thing to understand the trouble that my mom went through. She had a tough upbringing. She was her mother died in childbirth when my mom was 8 years old, and
Really?
lost my grandmother and the baby, the baby boy. And then so here was my grandfather, who was a World War I veteran, who had he was a traveling salesman, you know, sold gas fixtures and things across the country in England. And you know, in those days, he couldn't raise an 8-year-old single, you know, as a single dad, a young child. So my mother was sent to live with her aunt, my great aunt. And as it turned out, my great aunt had a daughter, my cousin, who I would always call my aunt because of the age difference. But they grew up together really as sisters, and so she was very, you know, that was a good thing that she got to be in that family. And then she went through and took dance lessons and acting lessons, and she wanted, you know, she had the bug to be an actress, and she ended up being an actress that did modeling and did news magazine ads, and she was on the stage and did some film work, and she actually was even in a movie with Bela Lugosi, Dracula.
Right?
And on the stage with Bela Lugosi, and she had some great stories about about that. But you know, it was a life where she, you know, there was a lot of pressure on her to be on all the time, and she, you know, the hours were, you know, you'd sort of, you know, sleep during the day and then work during the night, and she got to the point where she was taking pills, you know, to be up enough, and then pills to get down, and pretty soon she was dependent on them, and she just was, you know, had a period of depression that she went through, and was actually contemplating suicide.
Is that
and
right?
It was just a real powerful, example of how, having God in your life is so important. And, and really, she was searching and was really at the point where she was running out of options in her eyes. And it was really the best thing that ever happened to her and my family.
Yeah. God got a hold of her. And Ruth Graham herself took
Yeah.
her backstage. That story is unbelievable.
It's like, what is it they say? Coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous.
Yeah, right. Wow. And your dad, so he was with Billy Graham for 50 years?
50 years. He did the, he was like the audio-visual thing. He was in the Navy in World War II, got out, and then the GI Bill. He went to Bob Jones University and got a degree, but he didn't want to be an ordained minister, but he wanted to do some
Ministry.
Christian work.
Yeah.
And his forte was in organizing and he started with a, line level kind of job and doing the audio visuals thing and introducing and ended up, obviously that was the best thing that happened to him as well as us. And then he became the crusade director and did that for many years. And then in the 1980s, became the president of Worldwide Pictures and did that. And even after he retired from that position, he was Dr. Graham's personal representative on the West Coast for many years. And
what an amazing
and even
thing.
in his old age, he would still volunteer. He would call people that had. They would send him lists of people who had donated to the Billy Graham Association, and he would call them and thank them and pray with them on the phone and everything. So he was he was active up until he died one day short of his 90th birthday, but he was actively involved in doing that up until that time.
That is amazing. What a great story.
Yeah.
So, a lot's happened in the last 16 years, since you've been sheriff. And by the way, so Sheriff Bill Brown's my guest, if you're just tuning in. So you were awarded the Westmont Medal from my alma mater, and Outstanding Service Award for your leadership during the twin disasters of the Thomas Fire and the Montecito debris flow, which happened literally where we're sitting.
Yeah.
Talk to us about those days, that day, and kind of what that was like for you.
It was it was an amazing time. We we'd had some forewarning that a big storm was coming our way, and our director of emergency services contacted me and really, we'd had big storms before and this and that, and he told me, no, this is going to be a really, really big one. And we ended up doing a lot of press conferences and trying to get the message out ahead of time to people that this is really a serious situation. And the sad part is it came on the heels of the Thomas Fire, which was at the time the largest fire in the state's history, and had started in Ventura County and spread into our county. And a lot of people had been evacuated from this area already because of the Thomas Fire. And there was a real evacuation fatigue element, I think, that was there, where people just wanted to get back in their homes, and so this attempt to try to get people to leave was challenging, to get the word out. And anyway, the kept up the word from like Friday up until that Monday morning, and got the phone call early that morning. I live up in Lompoc, so I was an hour away, but got the phone call that morning that it had been a disastrous storm had come in, and when I started to hear about all that had happened, and just trying to mobilize all of our resources and get here. And of course, at first it was a rescue operation, trying to get many people who were trapped in their homes out of this area. And then became a recovery operation, trying to find the victims who had perished in that terrible disaster. And I think it was, the best of times and the worst of times in many ways. It was, it was horribly tragic, and just, I worked very closely with a lot of the family members, and, just really, experienced their grief as well, and, just was exposed to that. So it was difficult. And of course, all of my people that were involved, particularly in recovering people and whatnot, went through some very traumatic, emotionally traumatic experiences. But at the same time, I think it was, it was the best of times from the standpoint that we got to see the mutual aid that was sent to us from all outside, outside the state. I mean, we had out-of-state resources that were here helping us to address this problem, and then to see people come together in the community and extend and reach out and help each other and put people up in their homes and that kind of a thing. I think you got to see the better side of it as well. And I think it's great to see how resilient the community has been. Tough thing for us was, we're used to handling emergencies and even disasters, but they usually over in a couple of days at the most. And this one, just the recovery period dragged on, still going on in some respects, but it just dragged on for 6 months to a year intensively, and it was draining on a lot of our staff and certainly on our community. But I'm very proud of both our people in the organization, our allied first responders, and the community members, the people that live in Montecito, how they bounce back from it. We are truly a resilient community.
Yeah. That was just crazy. The perfect storm, I guess. I mean, to have that level of a storm right on the heels of the fire. Yeah. I know you probably planned for everything, but it's almost like, how could you possibly imagine a scenario?
No,
like
it was. Unfortunately, there had never been in anybody's lifetime a similar event.
Yeah.
We had some historical information, and then the worst that we had and had seen that we had been able to research, it showed, well, they had some mud that was down in Coast Village Road, and they had some, small rocks that came down. But I mean, when I got there that morning and looked and saw, literally boulders, some of them the size of motorhomes, they were it's just unbelievable. And the path of destruction that just literally taking houses off their foundations.
Yeah.
And it was just an incredible example of the force of nature.
Yeah, it's amazing. So Sheriff Brown is past president of the California State Sheriff's Association. He's police chief. He was past president of the Police Chiefs Association. I think the only person to ever have held both of those positions. And then he's a commissioner on the Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission for the state of California. He has a lot of different hats he's wearing. But I want to ask you this. As a sheriff, which I think, does that also make you like chief coroner? Is that part of the...
I am the coroner for the county of Santa Barbara, and 48 of the 58 sheriffs in California are coroners as well. So it was something that was done to combine the two offices in terms of efficiencies and cost effectiveness, and there really is no need to have a separate coroner. The funny thing is, some people ask me, "Oh, do you do the autopsies?" And I said, "No, I don't." It's not. Right. I'm the administrative end of it, and it's a ministerial ministerial position for me. But we have a highly trained, full-time medical doctor, a pathologist who works and really does the oversees the process and does the autopsies and what have you. But it's a fairly common thing here in California.
So what, because this is, I think a lot of people, including myself, really don't understand what, you've been a police officer and you've been, worked your way up, and then a police chief and then a sheriff, but you guys see things that the rest of us don't see. And I've read, and I've had people on this couch that have talked to me, I've had police officers and firemen and who've talked to me about the weight that sometimes they can carry from things that they see and experience. I think sometimes in police work, the level of substance abuse can be high because just how do you not take some of this stuff home? Yeah. So how does that work, and what are your thoughts or your experience in terms of really, seeing some pretty gnarly stuff? You guys are going in when the rest of us are going out, or nobody calls the police because something good's happening. Right. We want to tell you about. This is crisis, emergency. How do you do that job and stay married and be okay?
Well, there's a lot there to address. I think first of all, I think it's really important for police officers to have an understanding that there are a lot of challenges in this role that we play. Every time I swear in a new deputy sheriff or custody deputy, I give them a book. It was written by Dr. Ellen Kirschman called I Love a Cop. And it talks about some of the pitfalls that some members of our profession have found themselves in and how basically to avoid them. And basically it talks about the cumulative emotional impact that a job and it's dependent oftentimes on where you are and what you're doing. But there are some people that are in roles that, they see a lot of death, a lot of destruction, a lot of heartache, a lot of tragedy. And it's important to keep everything in perspective. It's important to have a support system, to have an element, and nowhere is that more important than to have a spouse that really understands and is there to support you. And I've been very blessed with Donna, my wife, being there in that respect as well. But I think I've always looked at it as, it's really, I don't think this is a job to me, it's a calling, and I think it is to most people that are in the profession. And I think that the calling is that we need somebody who can do those things, who can handle and take care of the community when there's a disastrous offense or occurrence or a felonious offense or something that is there, and people are looking to us and leaning on us, and we need to be there for them. On the same token, we have to also recognize that we have to be in a state of well-being, and we have to have an understanding that this stuff can sometimes affect us. And I think just as we put on, oftentimes going to work, body armor, we wear, cops that work out on the street have bulletproof vests that they put on. We put on emotional body armor also, an emotional shield, I think, that really, protects us, and a lot of it bounces off. But there are sometimes chinks in that armor, and there are cases that where it really will get to people, and it's very difficult. For example, any crimes against children, that occur, and if a police officer or deputy sheriff is a father himself or a mother herself, dealing with that and just equating that with her own children can be very difficult sometimes. And we've tried to establish in our agency, and our profession is getting much better at it, of making sure that people understand that they are supported and that they can. It's okay not to feel okay. Right. And it's natural. Yeah. Post-traumatic stress is it's a natural thing. If you're exposed to something that's traumatic, it follows that that's going to be stressful for you, and you have to understand that, and just and figure out ways to deal with it and to address it, and through knowing how to engage in some other activities where you're not sitting there thinking about it all the time, where you have other things that you're doing, exercise or things that are occurring where you can have an outlet for some of those stressors, is really important. So it's important to have that wellness program, and for people to understand that, and to be supportive of one another, and to recognize that, like I said, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah, and you must, as a leader, think about that for your people. I mean, is this something that you're talking about? All the time. All the time, yeah. All the time. And we have a great program. We have a division, the Behavioral Sciences unit in our organization, and we have a psychologist, Dr. Sherilyn Lee, who's manages that bureau for us, and basically she is responsible not only for the forward-facing things that we do that involve psychology, the co-response team that we have that's been very successful and wonderfully received here in the community, where we pair up a sheriff's deputy and a mental health clinician from the Department of Behavioral Wellness to go respond to 911 calls that involve people in crisis, whether it's a attempted suicide, or whether it's a disturbance, or they're just having a meltdown, or whatever it happens to be. People that have some additional training and emphasis, and she handles all that. But she also oversees a wellness program where we provide places for exercise, good quality food that's available. A guy that in the old days you'd work the graveyard shift, there'd be nothing to eat but Jack in the Box or
Right.
and you weren't getting a very healthy diet. And so we have this program called Warrior Meals, where we have a arrangement with a company where they come in and they have these wholesome, healthy meals that are available for us, and the deputies can get an account with them and take the meal and have something even after hours that is going to be good for them and not destructive. And all of those kinds of things, debriefings that we do, and we have a lot of times it's just being able to talk about it with somebody about, hey, I went through this and saw this traumatic event or experienced this, and so it's important that we have that. And I'm very proud of the programs that we have that are geared towards wellness.
Yeah.
Of our deputies.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So 5th term, you still liking this, I take it?
You know something? I love my job, and I tell everybody I look forward to coming into work each and every day. And I work with some of the best people in the world. I work in I get to meet and interact with people. I tell everybody as the sheriff, I'm kind of like a needle and thread, and I get to weave that needle and thread through circles of people that never cross paths with each other. And here, I'm in Montecito today talking to you on a television program, and then tomorrow I could be in Guadalupe, meeting with people there. I could be in New Cuyama. I could be in Lompoc. At our station there. And a lot of the people, there's good people in all walks of life and all across the socioeconomic spectrum throughout our county, and most of them never get to meet each other.
Right.
And I get this opportunity to weave through them and to see them, and I've been so humbled with the support that they have provided to me as I've because I need that support obviously to keep my job. And they have been just incredible. I've just, we've met so many people that have become friends and supporters that I thank God for that opportunity, because I wouldn't have had that in my old position as the police chief. It was great, and I enjoyed living in Lompoc and being the police chief there. But this is so broad and so it has allowed us to have experiences and relationships with people that we never would have. In all likelihood, we wouldn't have met and become friends had I not had this position. And it gives me a chance to see the wonderful work that you and the foundation do.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Well, our best to Donna.
I will pass that on.
Yeah, and thanks for the work you've done and you do. And
well, thank you, and thank you for the work you do. This program, getting good news to people, is so essential in today's what disaster do I look for next, or what horrible thing, or what vitriol between the parties. I just hope that I hope that this is something that'll help get people to the point where it doesn't matter what our politics are, and it doesn't mean that we're and you had mentioned it before. We're not enemies with people, even if they're opponents that you're running against. They're not your enemy; they're your opponent. And then once the election's done, it's time to come together. And it's time to work together, because most people, that's what they want. They want good, common sense solutions to the myriad of problems that we have in our community. So thanks for the contributions you and your team makes towards that.
Oh, we appreciate that. Wonderful. Thanks for coming.
All right, well, thank you.
Sheriff Bill Brown, everybody, the broad shoulders of Sheriff Brown. I'm grateful for him. I think a lot of us are in this community for the leadership he provides in good times and tough times. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.